called the China Study by Dr. Colin Campbell, and he was asked to go to the Philippines because children were dying of liver cancer between 8 and 10 years of age. Liver cancer, now this is something that only usually gets in adults, and at that, alcoholics. And he found the common denominator was peanut butter. Every jar of peanut butter that he tested had aflatoxin.
Barbara O'Neill, a world-renowned natural health educator and naturopath, has transformed countless lives with her profound insights into the relationship between food and health. In today's discussion, she is highlighting a dangerous hidden threat in some of the most common superfoods people consume daily. For those experiencing recurring infections, digestive issues, or unexplained fatigue, these snacks could be feeding one of the body's most dangerous invaders, fungus, peanut butter. Barbara O'Neill highlights peanut butter as one of the most dangerous foods due to its high susceptibility to mold contamination.
One lady said, "Are you saying fungus causes all disease?" Well, it has an aspect in disease, and one has to ask why it is there. So if it is in the human body, is it there because gut protection is broken down? Is it there because the person is eating a lot of sugar? Is it there because they're having a lot of antibiotics? Is it there because they're breathing in a moldy pillow? Is it there because they're a gardener constantly subjected to mold in the compost? You see, it's not as simple as that fungus causes disease. It certainly can be an element, and the detective hat has to be put on and asked, why are these things so? There are a few books, and I'd like to refer to those books now. This book is called Breast Cancer, Hope at Last, and it's written by the former head of the World Health Organization Department of Mycology, which is, of course, the Department of Fungus. And after 25 years of research, he put all his findings in a book. This book's called Breast Cancer, Hope at Last. And he has two other books, one's on prostate and one's called The Garden of Eden Diet. But what I'd like to just give you an illustration of now, I'd like to show you the amount of medical research he quotes. On this page here, there are 16 quoted research papers. In some of his books, he's quoting 30,000 research papers. Wow! So that much of the book is just the quoted research papers. There is another book, and this one's by an Italian oncologist. He's called Dr. Tullio Simoncini. And his book is called Cancer is a Fungus. There's another book, and it's by a Doug Kaufman. He's a medical journalist, and he writes with Dr. Holland. This is an American man, and his book is called The Germ That Causes Cancer. This book's out of print at the moment. You may get it on Amazon, which is where I got it. The book was a soft cover and it fell apart in my hands, but notice the front page of his book, the human DNA and the fungal DNA coming together to cause the cancer DNA. So the link between cancer and fungus is being acknowledged by many today. If you put that into the web, you'll have a whole heap to look at. But this book is very well known. And as you can see by my book, it's a very well-read book. Many guests look at this. It's called The China Study by Dr. Colin Campbell. And he was asked to go to the Philippines because children were dying of liver cancer between 8 and 10 years of age. Liver cancer, now this is something that only usually gets in adults, and at that, alcoholics. And he found the common denominator was peanut butter. Every jar of peanut butter that he tested had aflatoxin. Now the mold that gives off aflatoxin is Aspergillus. And Aspergillus can grow on grains. Peanuts are a common one. And the mold waste that is given off by Aspergillus is aflatoxin. Most people have heard of aflatoxin. Aflatoxin is the most carcinogenic substance that has ever been tested.
Peanuts are commonly carcinogens. According to a review in the journal Foods, peanut butter can have some negative effects on health because of germs and toxins. The study looked at two main problems: Salmonella, a type of bacteria that can make people sick, and aflatoxins, which are harmful substances made by mold. The researchers found that it is hard to get rid of these germs and toxins once they are in peanut butter.
And these children that were dying of liver cancer, he found that the aflatoxin was in every jar of peanut butter. He presumed that the poorer children would be dying and the wealthy children would not be dying. And he found the opposite was true. And this shocked him because he considered surely the wealthy children would be eating a better diet. But the wealthy children were eating what Time magazine called in one article they did, the meat sweet diet. In other words, high meat, high dairy, high sugar, high refined grains. Whereas the poorer children, they were eating a high vegetable diet, a little bit of soy, a little bit of fish, an unrefined diet. Colin Campbell scratched his head because in med school he was told the importance of dairy, the importance of meat, dairy for calcium, meat for proteins and ions. And yet what he was looking at is the poorer children were living and the wealthy children were dying, and the only difference was that diet. They were still having the peanut butter. So he looked a little bit further, and in one medical journal he saw an article on aflatoxin, on liver cancer, which immediately attracted him. And it was by an Indian doctor. And he had done research on rats. 20 rats, all injected with aflatoxin. Every researcher knows you inject aflatoxin, you create liver cancer. 10 rats, he gave a 20% animal protein diet. The other 10 rats, 5% animal protein diet. That's the only difference. He said 2 years rats live, and they test rats because rats have a very similar gastrointestinal tract to humans. And he found that at the end of their life, after 2 years, every rat on the 20% animal protein diet were either dead or dying of liver cancer. And he found every rat on the 5% animal protein diet was free of cancer. Never in research do you get 100% versus naught. He was shocked at this. He closed the study because he said this was against everything he'd been taught. Years later, he did his own research, and the book's called The China Study, because in China, I think it was in about the 60s, there's an emperor who got cancer, and he wanted to do research where he did maps on the parts of the country that had high cancer and low cancer rates. And the high cancer were always around the cities where they were eating the refined food, and the low cancer rates were always out in the country. That's why it's called the China Study. Years later, Colin Campbell did his own research, and he came up with the same results of this Indian doctor. But he did another aspect. He did 20% vegetable protein, but the rats did not get cancer. There was something in the animal protein that was triggering it. There are a few things actually. It creates an acid environment in the body, and cancer loves an acid environment. And one of those doctors, he was injecting sodium bicarbonate straight into the cancers. Cancer loves acid, and this sodium bicarbonate would cause a wave of alkalinity that the cancer could not survive in. Has he received a Nobel Prize? No, his qualifications have been taken away from him, I'm afraid, at this point. But my reason for showing you those books was to show you that this is acknowledged really worldwide by some very eminent doctors, professors and scientists who are looking at this and starting to get results. You see, chemotherapy and radiotherapy, I wonder if in about 20 years they're going to look that we're in the dark ages in treatment of cancer, because they certainly kill cancer, but they of course can kill healthy cells too. I find people that do survive chemo and radiotherapy are the people that change their lifestyle. And we here at our health retreat, we have seen some quite remarkable turnarounds by basically working with the human body. So the points that we use when looking at getting any yeast or fungus out of the body, and by the way, a person can have a yeast presence and not have cancer. Well, how would they know? The tongue. The tongue should be perfectly pink from the tip to the back. Now, if the white can be scraped off the tongue, that is waste. But if it cannot be scraped off the tongue, they are usually fungus buds.
In places with strict food safety rules, the risks are lower. But in other areas, especially where small producers make peanut butter, the chances of contamination are higher. These toxic substances are directly linked to liver cancer, as well as other severe health conditions. The risk is particularly high because aflatoxins remain invisible to the naked eye, making contaminated peanut butter appear harmless while quietly endangering health. Barbara strongly advises replacing peanut butter with safer alternatives like almond butter or sunflower seed butter, which are far less prone to mold contamination and provide a healthier option for daily consumption, yeast-containing foods. Barbara O'Neill warns that foods like bread, pizza dough, bagels, and pastries are a hidden threat because they contain yeast, a major fuel source for fungal overgrowth in the body. Yeast allows harmful fungi to thrive, disrupting the delicate balance of the gut microbiome. When this balance is disturbed, it can lead to numerous health issues, including digestive problems, weakened immunity, and chronic inflammation. These foods also create an environment in the gastrointestinal tract that encourages the proliferation of pathogenic microorganisms, making it harder for the body to heal and maintain its natural defenses. For individuals already struggling with fungal-related conditions, such as candida overgrowth or recurrent infections, consuming yeast-containing foods can significantly worsen symptoms.
The human body is designed to heal itself, and it'll heal itself if you give it the right conditions. So what are the right conditions for eliminating a yeast presence out of the body? Where it be something as simple as psoriasis or eczema, which are commonly caused by a fungus, or whether it be athlete's foot, tinea, jock itch, anal itch, vaginal itch, or whether it be even more serious with cancer. Number one, starve. How do we starve the fungus? Well, it's very important to acknowledge its favourite food. Its favourite food is sugar. And just about everything that you buy in the supermarket has sugar. It also, of course, multiplies when it is exposed to yeast. So this is your Marmites, your Vegemites, your Promites, your yeast spreads, all your sugars, yeast spreads, and also grains. We drastically reduce grains because they can commonly be infected with aflatoxin. In Australia today, all grain is tested for aflatoxin. The grain we get is not totally free because otherwise then none would get through, but a small amount. And of course, if the gut's working well, a small amount can be handled. Also, the person must check their home that they're not constantly being reinfected by a mold presence in the home. Number two, kill. The good news is that there are herbs that will kill fungus, kill mold, and will not kill you. One is garlic, it's well known. Another is olive leaf extract. Olive leaf extract contains a plant chemical called oleucin, and it is strong antifungal. One lady said, "Oh, I take a little bit of that every day." I said, "I would not advise you do that. That's like taking a little bit of antibiotic every day to prevent a cold. No, keep it for when you need it." Also, grapefruit seed extract. Grapefruit seed extract is a very strong antifungal, and if you do use it, my suggestion is only a few drops 3 times a day. You can buy it in a little container called Traveller's Friend. It's called Traveller's Friend because many people travel with it. They just put 1 drop, say, in a bottle of water, and it will kill off any bacteria or fungus that may be in there. Another one is Portiaco. It's a South American herb that is quite strong antifungal. When people are looking at eliminating yeast from the body, I say it's a good idea to work with a professional, a naturopath. But what I advise is maybe 2 weeks on this, 2 weeks on this, 2 weeks on this, 2 weeks on this. Body gets used to things, so it's good to alternate. Number 3, balance. Very important to bring back the balance in the gastrointestinal tract, and so that is taking a probiotic. When the antibiotic comes in, or the different drugs that kill off this, it's important to replace that gut flora. When you flood the gastrointestinal tract with the good guys, they bring the candida, yeast back under control. So the balance is important. Number 4 is alkalis. Yeast and fungus love an acid environment, so it's very important to alkalize.
Barbara emphasizes that avoiding these foods is a crucial step in starving harmful fungi and restoring balance in the body. Sweetened cereals. Barbara O'Neill identifies sweetened cereals as a hidden danger due to their high sugar content, which creates the perfect breeding ground for fungi, including yeast. Added sugars are empty calories, added during food manufacturing to enhance taste, but provide no nutrients, unlike the natural sugars in fruits and whole foods. The dietary guidelines for Americans recommend limiting added sugars to 10% of daily calories, while the World Health Organization suggests just 5%. These cereals are packed with refined sugars and artificial sweeteners, allowing fungus to thrive and multiply rapidly in the body. The overconsumption of sugar not only feeds harmful microorganisms, but also destabilizes blood sugar levels, contributing to fatigue, cravings, and a weakened immune system.
There's no doubt about it that diabetes was not on planet Earth until sugar was refined. Hippocrates, 400 years BC, no mention of diabetes. So there's no doubt about it that sugar plays a role. It takes 1 yard of sugar cane to deliver 1 teaspoon of sugar. It's a pure crystallized acid. And when it goes into the body, blood sugar levels go boom. And then the brain says, quick, insulin, get it down. And then there's this constant whiplash, which eventually wears pancreases out. But before pancreases get worn out, something else happens. The cell develops insulin resistance, as if the cell says, I'm sick of the sight of you. Go away. And yet the blood sugar levels remaining high because the insulin couldn't get it in the cell because there's insulin resistance, and the brain says to the pancreas, more insulin, more insulin. What's the body going to do now? That high glucose will spill out in the urine. Diabetes mellitus means sugar in the urine. But as you will see, that insulin resistant can be turned around very quickly.
Sweetened cereals also disrupt gut health by promoting the overgrowth of harmful bacteria and fungi, crowding out beneficial microorganisms that protect against infections and inflammation. For those battling fungal-related conditions or seeking to restore balance in their gut, eliminating sweetened cereals is an essential step.
So let's have a look at the glycemic index. Let's have a look at where the wheat sits on the glycemic index. What is the glycemic index? The glycemic index is a reading on how quickly the glucose in food is released into the blood. So the glycemic index, say baseline, is 55. So anything under 55 is considered low GI. And that's great for the diabetic because low GI foods give a nice, steady, slower but sure release of glucose. All your berries, they sit at about 26, and that's why berries are a great fruit for diabetics because they're low on the glycemic index. Grapefruit, that sits at 25, and that's not a surprise because it's not a really sweet fruit. Banana sits quite high. So you look at a cherry and you look at a banana and you think, well, why is the banana high and the cherry low? It's all about the fibre structure. Under a microscope, the fibre structure in the banana is loose, so the glucose is released quickly. In the berries, the cherries, the fibre structure is tight, so there's a slower release of glucose. It's like sweet potato and the Irish potato. Irish potato, high on the glycemic index. Sweet potato, low. Well, what's the difference? Under a microscope, the fibre structure in the sweet potato is tight, so it's a slower release of glucose. In the white potato, the fibre structure is loose, so quick release. You can Google glycemic index and it'll give you a reading of where different foods sit on the glycemic index. Where does sugar sit? Whether sugar is white or tan or brown, sugar sits at 59, and that is no surprise. Where does white, let's say white bread. So all foods made with white flour, it sits at 69. How could that be? It's because of the amylopectin A. Remember, it's not naturally in wheat, it's one of the side effects of the hybridization. Once you start playing with God's creation, you don't know what's going to happen. That's why genetically modified foods are actually dangerous foods, because they have the potential to actually interfere with and interrupt our own DNA.
Barbara suggests replacing them with nutrient-dense alternatives, such as unsweetened oatmeal topped with fresh berries, to nourish the body without fueling fungal growth.
And so to make sure that your body is able to deal with these and bring a proper balance back in the body, it is important to drink adequate water. It is important not to be taking the refined sugar, and if you do take sugar, it should be in the form of your natural sugars like honey, maple syrup, fruits, but in low amounts. The human body was designed to heal itself, and it will heal itself when you give it the right conditions.
Pasta. Barbara O'Neill cautions against consuming pasta, as it is typically made from refined grains that are rapidly broken down into sugar in the body.
By the way, the refined grains, it's almost as high as sugar. But there is one grain that gets the blood sugar levels higher than refined sugar. Is that a surprise? And the grain that does that is what? Bread and cereal and pasta and cakes, etc., and pizza are all made out of predominantly one grain. What's that one grain? It's wheat. Now, in the 1950s, wheat went through intensive crossbreeding. And the reason they put it through intensive crossbreeding is they wanted to create a plant with a high yield of grain, so that would help with the starvation crisis in Africa, in Mexico, in India. And eventually, Dr. Norman Boulay got a Nobel Prize for his hybridized wheat. At first, the stalk broke before the grain was fully ripe, because wheat used to grow that high. Do you remember that? We had a 25-year-old wheat farmer come to our retreat. He'd never heard of such a thing. He didn't know that wheat used to grow that high.
This quick conversion feeds fungi, including yeast, and promotes fungal overgrowth in the gut. The high carbohydrate content of pasta creates an environment where harmful microorganisms thrive, disrupting the delicate balance of gut flora and potentially leading to chronic digestive issues, inflammation, and a weakened immune system.
When they hybridized the wheat, they changed two main things. They changed the protein or the gluten structure, and that's why when people have irritable bowel, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, we looked at it last night, it has an irritating effect on the colon. That's why those foods must stop to heal that colon. Do I eat wheat? Sometimes. Not much, doesn't have any effect on me because I don't have any health problems. But if I had any health problems, I wouldn't touch it. But what it also did is what I particularly want to explain to you tonight is what it did to the starch structure. Because you have a look at this. How many of these are wheat? In this list, you've probably got about 10 or 15 different ones. Wheat. The majority on our carbohydrate list are from the wheat plant. So what it did, and I'm going to go to another screen to do this one, what it did, it created a starch called amylopectin A. Amylopectin A is the name of the starch that was created in the hybridization process of the wheat. So it's not naturally in that wheat. In the hybridization process, this was created. It's amylopectin A. And amylopectin A, let me show you what it does. Let's say this is blood sugar levels. Amylopectin A gets the blood sugar level up very high, very fast, then you've got that corresponding dump. That's the amylopectin A. Let's compare it to some other starches. Amylopectin B is found in bananas and potatoes, and if you're familiar with the glycemic index of food, you will know that bananas and potatoes, they get the blood sugar level up pretty high, pretty fast. So let's look at the B. The B goes fairly high, fairly fast, not as high, not as fast, and not as low. That's your B. Amylopectin C is found in beans, so legumes, chickpeas, lima beans, lentils, black-eyed beans, cannellini beans, kidney beans, so many different beans. What does it do? Amylopectin C gets a nice steady rise and a nice steady drop. That's your C. And every cell in the body requires, desires that steady, consistent delivery of fuel. It actually gives the pancreas a break. There's no, quick, we're too high, oh no, we're too low, oh no, we're too high. No, it's just this steady, consistent delivery of fuel. That's what it needs.
Moreover, pasta and other grain-based foods are at risk of mold contamination during storage, especially in warm and humid conditions. These molds produce toxins that can further compromise health, increasing the risk of conditions like liver damage and even cancer. Barbara emphasizes that minimizing or avoiding pasta and replacing it with alternatives like spiralized vegetables, quinoa, or whole grain options, stored properly, is a proactive step towards starving harmful fungi and restoring gut health. Aged cheese.
Aged cheese. What's the blue in the blue vein cheese? The blue in the blue vein cheese is mold. So all your aged cheese, they have their flavour because of the yeast. Let me put a distinction here between aged cheeses and fresh cheeses. Fresh cheeses are a pH of approximately 7. So there's your feta. And you can get some very nice goat fetas now. When I went down to Tassie to visit my daughter, she gets this goat feta in a little glass jar with oil and herbs, and it's very nice. I was at my daughter Julia's in Mildura at the restaurant there. She said, Mum, let me make you a goat cheese and tomato on crusty sourdough bread. I said, goat's cheese. She said, this one's nice. She said, the goat farmers have discovered that Aussies don't like cheese that tastes like old billy goats. So you can get some nice mild ones now. And I think you were telling me, Belinda, about a sheep's cheese. Yeah, you can get some nice sheep's cheeses too. So your feta, your ricottas, your cottage, they are all fresh cheeses. So they don't have the yeast component. So they are in a pH of 7. The biggest concern, of course, about these cheeses is the cows that they come from. But if your family wants to eat cheese, put some feta in the cheese drawer and not your aged cheese. And this week we're showing you how you can make some quite nice cheese alternatives with nuts and seeds. On Saturday we have lasagna for lunch, and there's a beautiful cheese type topping, but it's actually made out of nuts and seeds and garlic and different things, and when it cooks it sets.
According to a review in the Journal of Dairy Science, aged cheese can sometimes be harmful because it can grow molds that produce toxins, which are bad for our health. Barbara O'Neill cautions against consuming aged cheeses like blue cheese, brie, and camembert, as they are intentionally infused with mold during the cheese-making process. While this mold is considered safe for healthy individuals, it can significantly worsen fungal overgrowth in the body, especially for those with existing gut health issues or mold sensitivities. The review found that many molds, particularly from a group called Penicillium, can create substances called mycotoxins, which can make people sick. Additionally, aged cheeses are high in histamines, compounds that can trigger inflammation and worsen symptoms like headaches, sinus congestion, or skin problems. For individuals already dealing with fungal-related conditions, consuming aged cheese may intensify these issues and compromise the body's ability to heal. To use this knowledge in your daily life, make sure to always store cheese in the refrigerator and avoid leaving it out at room temperature for too long. If you see mold on cheese, it's best to trim it off carefully, or if it looks really bad, throw it away. Barbara suggests avoiding aged cheeses altogether and choosing fresh, non-moldy cheese options or plant-based alternatives to support a balanced and healthy internal environment. By doing this, you can enjoy cheese safely and keep your body healthy.